Hi, I'm Shelby Jo Long. Welcome to the Genius Entrepreneur Podcast. Here, I have the opportunity to explore those stories of genius entrepreneurs that have created a business out of their expertise so they can live a life of their passion and they can work in the space that they really want to make an influence. Today is no exception. I'm very excited to learn about this business and how this expertise transformed into an income stream. Because it's not one that you would immediately think would be a business, but I'm excited to learn more about it. So Don Selvic is a math tutor, and he has scaled his business surrounding his genius. Don, welcome to the interview today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Can you give us an overview of you and your business, and then we'll get into your background and how you got into everything?
Yeah, I run Math Celebrity, spelled just like it sounds. So think of it like a Google for math. You put your math problem in, push a button, and in a split second, we will show you the step-by-step work to explain it, followed by the answer. And it starts at third grade and it goes all the way through college. And last year we got 8.1 million unique visitors who we helped with 101 million math problems.
That's a lot of math problems. Sounds like a lot more than I want to do, but tell me more about the business. Do you work with schools? Is it's just an online platform for tutoring? Is that what it's focused on?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any employees, so it's just me and an algorithm. But the way it works is students and parents, when they need help with math, instead of trudging through boring textbooks and slow videos and the curriculum, they just want help right away. Because the average attention span, I think the latest study that came out from Harvard is 8.5 seconds. So what we do is we just say, look, put your math problem or your search term in, what you want to know more about, push a button, and we'll show you the step-by-step explanation. And the way we got started was I was working a corporate job as a programmer, and I got tired of every year the feedback would be good, but all you would get was, say, a 3.5% raise. I mean, you could save the company $1 million, $2 million. It was always that cost of living raise. And so I decided to branch out, and I said, I want to make some more money. Well, I was a math major in college. So I said, why don't I just tutor some students on the side for cash? We'll see how it goes. Well, one student turned into two turned into four turned into six. Well, being married and having a day job, obviously you can't scale that. So
right.
I was pounding the table, like, how can I help more people? How can I scale this? Well, it just so happens back in my boring day job, we had to help a team in India understand an American pension plan program that we were rolling out. My boss sent them some boring, like 300-page manual explaining it, very dry, and it puts you to sleep. And so the team in India asked for more help. They just weren't getting it. So I said, why don't I design a spreadsheet that walks you through each calculation? But the twist was, after you type the numbers in Excel, in the cell directly next to it, we showed the step, like the description of the math for the value you see in the cell. So you change the value, the math changes. And when they saw it, they're like, holy crap, I understand this. This is so easy to get. And that's when the light bulb went off. I said, well, if I can do that for a team in India with something as boring as pension plans, why couldn't I just take my expertise with math tutoring, put it on a site, they can ask the question, and then they'll get the answer, and I don't even have to be there.
That you talk about the pinnacle where you're like, well, if I could do this for somebody, then I should be able to create a business out of it. So that was the influence. That was a breaking point. Tired of being in corporate, tired of solving problems for other people and not getting paid for it. I hear similarities in some of these side hustles that turn into businesses out of their expertise. I've experienced a similar thing. I've been a college professor for 17 years, and I kind of discovered that there's a limit there too, limiting space as far as who gets to hear the material, who gets to hear the information. And then I wanted to step outside of that. So there's some fulfillment area and some lifestyle, also some benefits there. So, but it's not an easy road, right? It's you decide you want to start a business, and you said you started tutoring and taking it kind of step by step. And then when did the idea come to put this site together that would just solve your problems and explain the steps to you? When did that come along?
Shortly after that project with the Indian pension plans, I ran back to my house after work and I was Googling how to make a website, how to make simple calculators, because I was a programmer, but I wasn't a website programmer.
Yeah.
Well, it just so happens I was sitting next to a guy from Prague, Czechoslovakia, who was one of the most brilliant programmers I've ever met in my life. And I explained the problem to him and I said, hey, I don't have time to take a course or any of that. Can you just give me a crash course on how you got as good as you did and show me how to put an algorithm on a website? So I spent a couple hours with him, bought him some lunch and coffees. And over the course of 48 hours in a weekend, I put together some generic calculators, just one to add two numbers and one to subtract two, nothing special. But then I started adding the math and it was still really ugly, but at least it was doing the math. So then I asked him, how do I format this for the math notation and make it clean like you'd see on a chalkboard or an educational program? So he helped me out. And from those 48 hours, I was able to expand from 2 calculators to about 25 in the course of a month. And so
Wow.
all I did is every night can I build a new calculator or improve an existing one? And this year has been our 16th year. We have 507 calculators from that initial 2 that I built. And it's like I said, it's helped about 102 million math problems in a year. So it's really exciting to be able to impact that many people.
That is exciting. That is exciting. Who's your primary audience? Who uses it?
Google Analytics shows our age ranges start at about age 11 or 12 all the way to age 50. So, and we've talked to some of our users. So students, obviously, they can't buy the product. So they're just coming on Google and they'll say, hey, how do I solve a synthetic division calculator problem? Or as our SEO started growing, people were actually running math problems on Google and Google would return the link to my site already running the problem for them. So that was really awesome. But then what we've got is we've got mainly moms who are just tired of going through textbooks or learning the new math or relearning stuff they learned 20, 30 years ago. So what they do is they go on my site, type the problem in, read the math, and like, oh yeah, I remember that from 20 years ago. Then they take what they've learned, go over to their kid at the kitchen table and explain it to them. So it makes the mom look like a hero, but she doesn't need to tell them like, oh, I use this site. She could just see the math and explain it to them.
Yeah. And the step-by-step is so important because you always have to show your work and make sure that process is taught. Absolutely. Demonstrate to your audience. You know, I'm the demonstration speech person, so I love doing that because it really forces you to, and in math problems, you have to show all your work and show how you got the answer anyway. But it really forces you to be logical and put together a process. And that is how you teach others. And it's amazing how many people go over that step, right? They just want to get the problem done. They just want to have the answer, but they don't go through the steps to get there. So that's an important piece of the teaching, I feel.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because we took a survey once for a couple thousand users and asked, hey, why do you use our site? What do you get out of it? And a surprising answer was about 38% of the responders said, I knew how to do this problem, or at least I think I did. But 1, I needed that reassurance that I was right. And 2, I figured if you programmed it, you probably found the fastest and simplest way to do it. So I wanted to see if I could do it faster. So what we try to do is incorporate mental models into the calculators. We're not just showing you how to do it, but we're explaining the thinking behind it. So like I'm a huge fan of Charlie Munger. I don't know, he's Warren Buffett's investment partner. And he had an awesome interview one time. Somebody asked him, how did you get so good at investing? And he said, basically, we used a principle called inversion. So instead of trying to figure out what he says, instead of seeking genius, we avoid stupidity. And so every day what I'm trying to do is what things would I do to hurt a student's learning? What things would I do to slow the site down or slow the experience down? And then just either not do that or eliminate it. And as I eliminate more what I like to call like stupidity traits, the right way just kind of shines through, right? Like the sunlight through the clouds. So as we've incorporated things like mental models, inversion, root cause analysis, first principles, which Elon Musk mentioned when he built rockets, you put all that together and it just makes for a fast and easy experience for the students and parents.
Yeah, that sticks with that core theme of teaching the process and making sure people understand the process, which is how you transfer your genius from one marketplace to another, and how if you're solving problems and teaching people the process, then you empower them to do it themselves, but they can come to you for the answers.
Well, you just hit on a powerful principle. One of the questions I get asked most, especially by students and parents, is when will I ever use this or use algebra in the real world? And the answer is it has nothing to do with equations, formulas, or numbers. It's problem solving. And
Mhm.
things like inversion and first principles you will use for the rest of your life. So if you can get your head around it in math class, even if you don't get an A or a B, if you dissect the mental models through math, you're able to conquer life much easier.
Absolutely, because it's all about the how you approach things and the order that you approach things. And people don't think about that. I'm a teacher, so you're preaching to the choir here, but it's teaching the process rather than how to get the answer. I think that's a skill that we, particularly in today's age, where you can ask your phone what the answer is, and then you get an immediate answer. And then this next generation, and even the Google generation, the Generation Z, that maybe they're not taught those principles. And it's such an important thing to be able to teach that process and to problem solve, because it doesn't disappear.
No, you nailed it. I mean, the problem with Google and things like ChatGPT is they don't teach you to connect the dots. And the best thinkers in the world connect dots that you don't see on a Google result or a ChatGPT answer stack. And so that's what we try to do, is just not only the work and the answer, but what else does this relate to? We'll show them related subjects, related problems, things like that, because it's all about connecting the dots and expanding what Charlie Munger calls your lattice work of the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. I if you don't know, in some of my episodes, I've talked about how I'm a debate coach too in college, and it's solving problems in a different way. So it's just like it's argument, and it's the engagement of argument, and it's the discussion about how you come up with those things. But a lot of our society is not really trained in argument, and how to have a good argument, and how to compare the costs and the benefits, and how to come up with a logical solution. And so it's a different type of problem solving, but it's a way of thinking that I think is so important.
Yeah, debate, as you mentioned, that's fascinating, because I think one of the things that all of us need to learn more is you can learn as much, if not more, from your enemies or people you disagree with than you can your allies. So it helps to study all sides.
Absolutely. And in our very polarized world, you know, Democrats, Republicans, vaccinate, don't vaccinate. It's very polarized. There's not a lot of middle ground. And I think we avoid a lot of those discussions just in general. So ask my team members about that. I poke the bear all the time. So it's pretty fun, but it's important to be in that space. So can you tell me about you transitioned your genius into an income stream? You have a thriving business. Can you talk about some of the most prevalent challenges you had when you were on that path of entrepreneurship and developing your own thing?
Yeah, I'd say probably my weakest personality trait, I'm trying to improve as I get older, but I'm still not there, is I have the patience of a 3-year-old child. And so for building things, it's good, because if you need to get something going, right, I'll explode out of the gate and let's just build something, a minimum viable product, test it and see where we land. But the problem is, when dealing with users and design, I was always very weak at design and artistry. So while the algorithm is powerful, I still struggle. And we get this feedback too, is sometimes the feedback we got is like the site looks like it's from the 1990s, or I can't figure out the interface. And so but the positive part of that, the silver lining in the cloud, is it forced me to think about, okay, if I can't figure this out, who's really good at design? And that's when I first learned the lesson of who, not how. So if something needs to be done and I don't know what to do, I immediately used to be like, okay, how do I do this? But as I got older and wiser, I said, somebody knows this better than I do, even if I learned it. So let's go find them and either pay them or maybe do some sort of partnership. And as I embrace the who, not how, as well as take my ego out of the feedback that came in that says, I like this, but this looks garbage, it helped me grow as a person. Because I don't think there's a job or a role on the planet that forces you to grow as a human more than being an entrepreneur. And so that's been the fun part of the journey. It gets frustrating at times, but it's a fun part of the journey.
Well, and you're a solo entrepreneur too. So, and you created your empire, right? And so so reaching out and getting past that, the delegation, you are who you delegate to, but then when you decide to stay in your genius zone and make sure, ask other people to solve those problems, that helps you to just grow more in that zone. So I think that's a super important lesson to learn. You don't have to do it all your own, and you should. To stay in your genius zone, you should delegate some of those things, or hire it out, or figure out how you get that problem solved. I think that's super important to learn.
Yeah,
So
somebody wiser than me told me you should start, as you move up in the world and business, start acting more like an architect and less like a doer. So I've tried to embrace that mindset.
yeah, which is easier said than done, but it is, because you know how to solve the problem, and it's hard to kind of let that go. But that's an important lesson to learn. What would be your advice to someone who is thinking about starting a business, stepping outside of their corporate and starting a business of their own, out of their expertise?
That's a good question. I'd say if I could go back in time and do it all over again, I would make two changes. First, block out anybody's opinion that doesn't influence your money or your growth. So you will have friends, you will have family when you make that move that say, I don't know if this is a good move, or you shouldn't be spending money, or don't take the risks. You have to block all that out, because there are some people who may be your friend or family member. They don't either A, don't want to see you grow, or B, don't want to see you change. Because one, that's not the person maybe they grew up with, but two, it also forces them to look at themselves and saying, here's somebody that I know that I'm close with that's making improvements, whether it's weight loss, whether it's making more money, whether it's impacting the world. And now I can't use the excuse of, oh, that's only for certain people, because I'm living or talking to somebody that's doing it in real time. So that's the first one. The second one is, instead of trying to fit a problem to a market, find a market that needs a problem solved. And this is a huge mistake I made, is figure out where your genius is, but then figure out a problem you can solve that a market that already wants it. And I'm not saying don't be a pioneer in some ways, because you always hear that saying, pioneers get arrows in their back, but use Silicon Valley's model of a minimum viable product. Let's say you have an idea for a product. Go find a market that has a demand and test it with like $5 or $10 Facebook ads. Are you getting leads? Are you getting a sale? Are you getting interest? If you're getting crickets, chances are either your messaging is poor, or the product is just nobody wants it, or the timing's wrong. So those are the two biggest changes I'd make to avoid the mistakes I made.
Yeah. And I think that's the important part about testing it, validating it, and making sure that, I've worked with a lot of people that have entered their business into the marketplace, and which is a great idea for a solution. But without that test or validation, you don't have the chance to change things and move things and shift things about how things are going. Your first product is not going to be the one that you're probably going to scale with. So there's going to be a lot of changes in that way, because it responds to the marketplace.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to treat it like, I'm a big fan of Kaizen, which is small continuous improvements every day. I mean, if you improve you take a new skill, it doesn't have to be a business. If you improve 1% a day every day, it doesn't sound like much, but after 365 straight days of a 1% improvement, you are, I think it's 37 times better than you were on day one. You wouldn't even recognize yourself. And so Kaizen's easier because some people just want to come out of the gate and make $1 million. They're trying to swing for the fence. And it, like you said, it doesn't work that way. You have to test things. But if you can make those small wins every day, eventually they start compounding like crazy.
Yeah. Says the math teacher. Compounding. Absolutely. We talked the last interview I had, we talked about how those businesses that come out of the gate and make $1 million in those first years, there's about 10 years of thinking that goes into that. So it takes a while, and that's okay, because you've got to respond to the market, and then COVID happens, and then the market shifts. And I mean, you have to be nimble and be prepared to shift that. So that's great. Well, can you tell our audience where to find you? I'll put your LinkedIn, and I'll put your website in the show notes, of course, but tell our audience where to find you if they want to seek out your expertise.
Yeah, the two best places are mathcelebrity.com, MATH celebrity.com, and then LinkedIn. Just look for DONSEVCIK.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, any other pieces of advice you'd like to give our budding entrepreneurs out there?
I'll leave everybody with this. Just try to make, and we covered it a bit before, just try to make small improvements every day, and don't let failure, treat failure like feedback. If you reframe failure as feedback, it's just simply you found a way that hasn't worked. And when you frame it like that, you'll pull the negativity out of the situation and reframe it as an experiment where you get better every day.
That's great. That's a great piece of advice to end the interview on. Don't treat failure as feedback, because that can just help you in the next day. That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming to the interview today, Dawn. It was a pleasure to hear your story. I'm excited to check out your product. My brother was also a math major in college, so there's some interesting connections there. And, you know, I've got 2 young kids, so perhaps we will use your product. That, since I don't remember very much math, I'm more in the communication kind of world. So, but different place, but what a great story. And you are truly an example of an entrepreneur that has built a business out of their expertise. And it's a niche market, but it's a market that has a definite need. And it also provides solutions that can teach others. And I think that's such an important thing. So thank you for telling your story. And to you genius entrepreneurs out there, I hope you were inspired to hear a story about an entrepreneur that turned their core genius into their business. And you can also live the life of your passion if you want to dig into your genius and figure out how to make a business out of it. Always reach out if you have any questions. Myself, ShelbyJoLong.com, or any of our genius entrepreneurs on the podcast. I'm sure they would love to talk to you about their story and their journey and to help you in your next steps. So we'll see you next time.